Recording stuff. Do 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 do. We're recording stuff. Do 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 do. What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well, but also if you're not doing so well, you are definitely welcome here, and that's partly what we're going to talk about today. There are just some topics that I feel like need to be talked about and kind of just aren't. Like, I did a Google search for being a therapist when you're not okay, being a therapist when you're struggling with your own mental health, whatever variation of Google search you can think of for like, what should a therapist do when they're not doing well? And it's actually not that easy to find information about this. But I've interacted with enough therapists at this point to conclusively say that this happens to everybody at least sometimes, if not a lot of the times for us, where we're showing up to work to see our therapy clients and we're arriving feeling like, I'm not okay today. I might not be okay in general. Now, as is true with pretty much anything I ever talk about on this channel, really, I am not a definitive expert on what to do if you're struggling with your mental health as a therapist, if you're feeling not okay, but I can talk about it. I can shed some light on this experience. So if you are listening or watching to this episode because maybe you're feeling like you're not so okay right now, just know you're not alone. It's okay to not be okay. I know that's some cliche coined somewhere, but it's true. And I sure hope that there are some spaces you can find where it's okay to talk about it and get some support. But with all of that said, let's talk a little bit more about what the nuances are when we're feeling not okay and yet we're still doing our best to show up for our therapy clients. Now, I know there's some pieces that do get talked about in the rare instances where people do talk about therapist mental well-being, that of course you can always seek professional services and supervision, and it's always okay to take time off as well. But there's definitely more to this conversation than just like, yeah, of course, seeing our own therapist can be really helpful. And it's always more than okay to take a mental health sick day or like a sabbatical if you need one. But what if you're not okay still and not okay for a prolonged period of time? I'm using that phrasing really loosely. Being not okay could take many forms. Not okay could mean I'm dealing with a severe mental health diagnosis. It could mean I'm grieving the loss of an important loved one, or it could be something else. Before we get into the different iterations of still seeing therapy clients when we're feeling like we're not okay, I'd like to spend a moment on like how I go about determining if I'm going to cancel a day of sessions or not, or even just a single session. So here are the 3 questions that I like to run through to just help calm my system when I'm considering canceling a day of sessions, when I'm like mentally not feeling okay. The first question I like to ask is like, how am I affected right now? And how would it affect me to still see my clients, or maybe it's specific clients in particular? Then I like to ask, how would this affect my clients, or it might be specific clients in particular? And then how might it affect our therapy work? Okay, there's definitely other nuanced ethical type questions to take into consideration when we're talking about like, do I cancel just for today or this session or not? But in this episode, I also want to zoom out to more general experiences of just not feeling okay. It's not just, oh, I need to take a mental health day, wink, wink, hashtag self-care. It's like, hey, I'm really not doing well. It's been going on for a long time. So if you were going to cancel, we would be talking about canceling for weeks or months or even longer. Aside from some of the ethical concerns that we've touched on of like, is this helpful to my clients for me to show up when I'm not doing well? There are additional concerns that I hear from folks. And the next loudest one that I hear is, am I being a hypocrite or am I a fraud for showing up to help clients go through hard things when I'm going through a hard thing and I feel like maybe I'm not dealing with it very well? Like, isn't that off-brand poor marketing to say like, let me help you with your hard thing even though I can't help myself with my hard thing? I get it, especially the work that we do as therapists. It's hard to do a like, do as I say but not as I do approach to what we are doing in therapy. If you're feeling like a fraud, you're feeling like a hypocrite because maybe however it is that you may or may not be coping with what you're going through may not feel like the healthiest way, or you can't figure it out, air quotes, however you're speaking to yourself about it. Here's my response to that. By definition, a huge component of the therapy work lives in the relationship that a client develops with another human, with their therapist. What I hear a lot in this misconception that a lot of therapists have of like, I'm a fraud for still treating therapy clients when I'm not doing well, is that we can often tell ourselves that we should be able to figure our stuff out all by ourselves, whereas our therapy clients are needing the help of somebody else. But the reality is every human needs other humans in order to thrive. And maybe your therapy client has access to you, and maybe you are the help that they need to help them move through whatever they're needing to move through. But you may or may not have access to the type of help that you need to move through what you're going through. Or maybe you are already moving through what you're going through as well as you can with the tools that are available to you. Or even if you had an endless amount of tools available to you, humans to support you, you name it, it might still look like this. And this is you dealing with it as well as you can in the array of circumstances that are underway. So I think embedded in that, there is this question that is good for us to ask of like, is there anywhere where I would be helped by bringing another person or other people into what I'm going through that might be helpful, that maybe I missed? But if you don't have access, or maybe you're already doing those things, then kind of check yourself to say like, am I telling myself that I need to have these things figured out all by myself or on a certain time frame? Like, yeah, I'm grieving right now, but it should only take X amount of time, and it's been taking a lot longer than that. We can kind of tell ourselves these things that we wouldn't say to our clients, but we expect things of ourselves that we wouldn't expect of our clients, which is a weird double standard, and I don't think makes any sense. One tip that can be helpful sometimes, I think, is self-disclosing like a teensy bit. In some cases, just speaking from personal direct experience, there are times where we know something that we're going through is going to affect our therapy work, but it may still be totally okay to see our therapy clients if we add some sort of disclosure. There's scenarios where I definitely just fully disclose what happened, like when I've had a loved one pass away or a pet pass away. I've let clients know that maybe I'm a little teary today because I lost a loved one or I lost a pet, and I'm still feeling well enough to meet, but if I'm seeming a little extra teary, it might be because of that, and everything's okay. What I mean by that is like, I know I'm not doing okay in general, but I'm doing okay enough to be able to very much still attune to my clients' needs, be here, listen, and continue our therapy work. Okay, here are a few more practical tools to utilize to help navigate these scenarios when you're not okay. One, I've heard therapists say that they're afraid that they will cry or break down in session in some form. To that, I'll say, one, it's totally okay to cry in session. How to respond to this or what to do about it is more about, again, those 3 questions that I brought up at the beginning. Like, how is this going to affect you? How is it going to affect your client? How is it going to affect your therapy work? For example, let's say you're grieving a loss and your client brings up their own loss that they're grieving, and you get maybe tearful, or you have a bit of a cry with your client, but you're able to still very much personally like regroup, be okay enough as you're dealing with that loss. Your client is okay. You're not like sobbing for 30 minutes of your session, just losing it. But, maybe your client can experience this as like you're joining with them, or you're empathizing, but still attuning to them, and that the therapy work can still continue. Then if you want to, you can still proceed with your client, perhaps with a little bit of a disclosure like we talked about before. Or if you feel like I'm going to break down and I'm going to be not okay, I'm going to kind of lose it, quote unquote, meaning like lose the frame of the therapeutic session where now you're needing to tend to yourself because you're really going through something, then I think if you can anticipate that that's likely going to happen, or there's a really good chance that's going to happen with therapy clients, I think that is a good time to consider taking some leave, getting some care for yourself while you recover, to take care of yourself. That's so important. And it's also, probably not going to benefit your client either. With that said, I have some nuanced thoughts to add in on this, like, should they take time off question. Sometimes we might simplify a problem like the one I just mentioned and say, like, yeah, if you're really going to kind of lose the therapeutic frame, not be able to attune to your client because you need to attend to yourself, then you should cancel or take time off, which, yes, but it could also be a good time to pivot. It's always okay to consider a pivot. Like if you are a grief counselor, but then you are now suddenly going through your own grief, if it's most helpful to you and your clients to pivot away from doing grief work, totally understandable. So it could be a presenting issue pivot. It could also be like a therapy modality pivot. Like maybe you were working with couples, but then I don't know if your marriage fell apart and it's too difficult to work with couples now. Maybe you switch to individuals, or maybe you work with kids now. And it's also okay to consider career pivots. Like, do you want to have your finances come from more than one space versus all of your finances coming from therapy work or one-on-one therapy work? Like maybe you do some groups and some one-on-one therapy work instead of just all one-on-one therapy work. There's different kinds of pivots that can sort of help us feel more okay in the work that we're doing. So please don't hear that as me recommending that like you shouldn't take time off because you can pivot. Not at all. If you need to take time off, take time off. I'm just also wanting to put out there that sometimes the only available option isn't just taking time off or leaving the profession altogether. It's okay to kind of brainstorm what your options are, even within the profession, just sort of pivoting into something a little different. Another concern that comes up for therapists sometimes is, when we realize that we're going through something that's big enough that it knocks us off of our A game as a therapist, where, we can still very much attune to our clients' needs, take care of them, offer them the support that they're needing, but we're not like on it to like the 11th degree, like maybe we typically would be, that then we can start to feel like we're offering subpar care, that we're like phoning it in. And so therefore, we're doing a disservice to our clients. I used to feel that way as well, but the reality is like, there are enough days that are at least slightly off my A game that if I canceled for every time I was slightly off my A game, in this phase of my life, I would be canceling like more than 50% of my sessions. Now I'm perimenopausal and often cranky and still sleep deprived because turns out that happens even when your kids are like 4 and 6. I don't feel like I'm not okay. I'm just not on my A game, It is what it is. And at that point, you might start to question, like, is it more beneficial for your client to cancel 50% of your sessions, or is it more beneficial for you to still show up in your therapeutic frame, but just like slightly cracked, most of the time, 95, 98% of the time without canceling? For me in this phase, I choose showing up. Whenever we have narratives in our mind about how we're supposed to show up in therapy, that can just compound on itself whenever we're not showing up in that way. Then we have this narrative kind of sometimes shouting at us, being like, hey, you're not meeting expectations. This is subpar therapy. And we can start to rehearse a very unhelpful narrative when perhaps it's possible we are still delivering very effective, successful therapy that our clients, if we could interview them, would say like, oh my gosh, no, you're doing an amazing job. This is so helpful. One tip that I wish I had, at least, and some of you might find helpful, is, ask yourself what those supposed to items are in your mind and gently call them into question. So I think my point in this is like, we don't need to carry that extra narrative on top of everything else saying that like, we're not meeting expectations, because that's going to wear on us and make us feel even less okay. Obviously, this episode is not a definitive answer to like what to do in every situation where you might be feeling not okay as a therapist, but I largely just wanted to make this episode to put this conversation on the map. And my biggest hope from this episode, well, two biggest hopes from this episode are, one, that you feel like you are not alone and it's okay to not be okay. And two, that you feel encouraged to have this conversation in other spaces as well. At any given point, if you're in a consult group or you have coworkers or wherever you might be interacting with fellow therapists, like at any given point, somebody is probably feeling not okay, whether they said it or not. Can we normalize it? Can we talk about it? Can we just be good therapists to ourselves and each other for it? Like, that would be awesome. So even though this episode might be all over the place, I'm pretty sure it was, hopefully we can at least start talking about this some more. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform included for free for all users, and they also have some new AI features to help streamline your note-taking process. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, thanks for joining me in this episode. I'm always a little nervous when I don't script an episode that I'm just gonna meander, and I sure did today, so I hope it was still helpful to you. If you have any tips that I didn't touch on for how somebody might be a therapist while feeling not okay, feel free to add them to the comments below. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.